we welcome the night.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Horror Night Oasis, a radio show where we discuss the latest movies and news from the world of horror. Joining me tonight, as always, is my co-host Ian. Ian, are you there?
I am.
How are you this week, sir?
Stressed.
I understand that. I'm having work done on the house, so my front porch is a complete disaster right now. But we're here to get all that out of the way and talk some horror. And believe it or not, Ian, we're actually going to do what our intro says and talk about some new horror. We haven't done that in a while.
What?
Yeah, I know. How crazy is that? Because this past week I actually got to see Malignant at the drive-in, so I got to see two films for the price of one. So I got to see that and The Forever Purge, and I'm not going to really discuss The Forever Purge because I want to talk about Malignant, because I'm not going to go into a full detail review because we got another film on deck to finish out our two episodes a month show with our Coulrgoria review a little bit here in a second. And I'm going to get into Malignant and say that I thought it was all right. I actually, there's two camps. It's very divisive. There's the average casual moviegoer that kind of expected Insidious, Conjuring type of film, because, again, it's James Wan. But as soon as the film started, I knew that wasn't going to be how the film was going to turn out, because it starts with a pretty interesting opening sequence. It's not a hard one to figure out. I mean, I've seen this film realistically done a few times, but just not in the vein of how this one turns out. But I liked it. It's sort of almost like a parody of like those haunted house films, of course, like the Insidious and Conjuring, where it starts out that way and then it just totally goes off the rails. And it felt like more of like, it's very slasher-esque giallo towards the end. And it's just something else, man. It's like one of those weird films that you would find on the video racks, like a store, like perusing the aisles and like, what's this? And like it's like right beside Basket Case, and like I can see something like this because there's definitely inspiration from Basket Case in this film. A lot of Henn and Lauder stuff. And the one thing also that I'm going to say is like people are, it's very hit or miss. People either like it or they hate it or they think it's the worst thing ever. Again, I've seen, a lot of films. I've seen a lot of films where it takes this kind of subject matter and done. And honestly, given the fact that James Wan is an Australian-born citizen, this felt like a very, very like modern Ozploitation film because it's just so out there. You know, it felt like something like Body Melt. You know, just like how obscure it is, or just like that awkward. Like, where's this going? Is this really where we're going? And it's just had that vibe of something that you would see from Australia in like the 80s, the late 70s, 80s. And it had like that. And like, I don't know if there's another film, like I think it's Australian. It's called Contagion. It's from, I think it's like from 88, 87, something like that. It's about a guy that goes to this house and there's these two women there. And like he's having sex with both of them, and it's just a weird film, and it's very sort of almost not similar, but the tone is like, where's this going, and it leads to something else, a big realization. And then there's again, it's just like I know where this, where I enjoyed the film because it's just like something you would not see from like a studio like Warner Brothers putting out. It's just something that's like totally out there, and I like that aspect about the film. Is it rocky? Yes. It's a little hit and miss, but it's like the old wooden roller coaster. It's a little bumpy, but it's still a fun ride. You're gonna have your moments where you're gonna feel like you're gonna fall out, and the tracks are gonna, the cart's gonna take off from the tracks. But it's the experience. Like, holy shit, I want to, like that was something, But it's still a fun, interesting little movie because it's just so out there. And again, people are talking about like the police scene. Like, I've seen that done before. There's another film called Basement Jacks where it's about a killer, and he has these double machete wielding arm blades, and he's just going through there sort of Blood Rain style in this police station, hacking people apart. So this one, and plus the killer in Malignant, he dresses up like the killer in Tulpa and like a few other like giallo, black gloves, the coat. So it's very similar to those 70s, 80s giallos. But I liked it. I mean, it's not perfect, and it's a little few things here and there, but it's still an interesting ride nonetheless. And I thought I dug it. It's just like we're going that route, and it goes that route. Like, all right, I'm in for it, because it's just so out there. And then the reveal. Like again, like you can see it coming if you know what you're looking for. But again, those casual, average movie viewers, who only like modern stuff, they're not going to go back and see like stuff like basket case films, all three of them, and then of course like a bunch of like it's sort of like if the Dark Half, Stephen King's Dark Half, was like mixed with basket case, and like they did all the LSD or cocaine that Stephen King did while he was writing It. It's just like if that was, he had the bender while writing The Dark Half instead of It, we would have got something like this, because it's just very, very on the nose. It's just like, yeah, it's out there, and it's not going to be for everyone, and so I understand that. I get that aspect. It's like you're in a car, the driver wants it cool, the passenger wants it like hot and warm, and like you're in the back seat, and you're getting this weird amalgamation of like cold, warm air, and like I don't know which one I like. It's just like, both of it's fine, but I'd rather go this way or that way. It's just like that weird, again, me and my weird analogies, but still, it's just like, it's divisive. It's going to be divisive. Any film is. But for what it is, I wanted something, it's just so different. It's like the same stuff over and over and over in a haunted house movie. And just to see, like, again, I always say more slashers as well, and this is sort of a slasher in a sense. And again, a few things don't make sense here and there in the story-wise, and it's, again, almost like a parody in itself of what it's trying to achieve, but it's just one of those weird ones that you would, like, see from, like, some low-budget indie filmmaker, like stuff we would review for, like, our marathons and find randomly, just, like, so out there, like, and seeing a big studio, put that out. It's just like, well, that was interesting, like, I love that. I love that aspect of it. But you have any thoughts? I know you haven't. I don't know if you haven't seen it yet. But any thoughts?
I haven't.
Some people might have watched it.
No, like I haven't. I haven't even seen a trailer for this movie. Like, and I know that's weird because my wife was telling me about this movie, and usually she doesn't know what's playing, so I don't know. But so I had no clue of what it was supposed to be like, and she said it seemed like it was supposed to be like a movie like Insidious, and I was like, oh, okay, that sounds okay. And then you talked to me a little bit about it, and I'm like, I really want to watch this movie because I haven't watched a decent horror movie. Like, I think the last actual horror movie I watched was A Quiet Place 2.
Mm-hmm.
So, in theaters. So it's been a while, and I'm glad that this movie doesn't make you want to pull your hair out.
No.
So that's good.
Like I said, it's hit and miss, and it's going to have some moments where it's not really clicking right. And, like, again, there's a few things like that, it includes the attic stuff, but I don't want to get into that because, again, spoilers and stuff. But, like, there's a certain aspect where, again, I don't want to get into it. I'm just going to say I dug it for what it was trying to achieve. Yes, it's a little rough, but sometimes you need that. Sometimes you don't need something fully polished. I mean, that's what makes, like, all the films from, like, the 70s and 80s sort of classics, and we talk about them. You know, again, Henenlotter. You know, I love Henenlotter. And, you know, The Basket Case and Larry Cohen with It's Alive and a bunch of all those weird movies like that. And it's just like, it's very sort of something you would pick out of there. You know, it even goes back to like the 90s with like a film called Severed Ties. Giant, you know, mutated killer hand movie that's connected to this guy's body. You know, it's just like these weird off the wall movies. They're just like so much fun. And like, yeah, this one takes a little while to get there before the ball's rolling, but once it does, once it has that impact, you know, that where it's like, okay, now this is where it's at. I mean, if you know, it's a wild one. I mean, it's honestly the most out there movie in a theater in a while because you don't see stuff like that often, and it's kind of refreshing, you know, for what it is. And like I said, I mean, it's James Wan, he's Australian, so it has that Ozploitation feel to it. That it's just like, it's so not Hollywood, so it makes sense. But that's my thoughts on it. That's my thoughts on *Malignant*. Maybe some other people will understand where I'm coming from. Again, not a lot of people have seen half the stuff I have, and they're not going to get the references or even maybe go back in time to watch the films. But it's worth doing because you're going to be well versed and you're going to understand sort of what I think James Wan was trying to achieve with the film. And it was like everyone's expecting the next, you know, Conjuring Insidious from him, and he totally takes a little bit of that and then just fucking throws it at a wall, and it busts into a lot of pieces and just sticks to you. And yeah, so Ian, that is going to do for my small mini review of *Malignant*. I kind of went into it, but I figured we needed to. We haven't done it in a while, and it was a new film. And with our Coulrgoria review coming up, there really, I don't know how long that was actually going to be because there's not a lot of meat on the bone for there. But let's get into it. Our Coulrgoria special, the end of our 2-month show, Coulrgoria special. And this is The Night They Knocked from 2019 or 2020. I have no idea. It says 2019 on IMDb, but other places are showing it as 2020. So I guess it was done in 2019 and released in 2020. But this one's going to be divisive. Honestly, this one's truly divisive when I was mentioning it to you after I watched it. But let's get into the story, and then we'll get our thoughts on it back and forth and what we thought should have been better. But it's about these group of college students, and they're getting together at a cabin in the woods for a weekend getaway of just hanging out because they're taking their finals and they're basically moving on with their lives. Basically, you know, they're getting done with college and they're ready to further their careers. And so they all get there. Everything's going fine, and each character, to an extent, has a backstory that's sort of played out throughout the film. You have Tariq. He's the football player. He's the black guy. He is hoping to get this scholarship for this football to get himself into the door for some kind of football team, and he's waiting on a phone call from his coach. And then his girlfriend, who is pregnant or not pregnant, because she peed on 2 pregnancy tests, and one came back negative, one came back positive. And the thing is, she technically cheated on Tariq, and so he doesn't know, and he's not a black guy, so she would be having a white baby. And then we have the 2 brothers who are, this is their house, it's their father's house, that they're going there to meet, and the brother was in jail for trying to steal a car, and, like, his brother is finishing up college. He's sort of smaller. And then, like, the brother, the non-convict brother, it has a girlfriend, and then you have, like, the 2 stoner couples that just hang around and smoke pot. And then I think there's another person, but I'm forgetting them. And they're just there. They're talking, trying to get to know each other. And then there comes a knock on the door on the house, and, like, things are starting to disappear. And, of course, each one thinks they're playing with each other. There's sort of some arguments here and there from a couple people. And then it turns out that their phones are missing, and there's the knocks on the door was from some clowns. And there's an opening shot in the movie where there's another lady. Again, it's totally just showing that there's some escaped clowns or something happening where people are getting attacked in their home by clowns, and they're left a bloody mess on the radio when everyone was going to the getaway house, the weekend house. And so that's the gist of the movie. Now, here's the thing. The movie itself, it's not bad. It's perfectly fine. The downside is, with that being that it's perfectly fine, doesn't stray away, it's, typically, perfectly average home invasion-esque movie with clowns. Am I going to remember this over something like we've previously reviewed before, that is just so out there and so bewildering, that just like a mind fuck of the films that we reviewed? I was like saying, am I going to remember this film over Clowntergeist? Am I going to remember this film over Big Top Evil? Am I going to remember this over, of course, 8 Ball? But there's like all these things. Like, it's perfectly average. And there's the clowns are a little bit mean-spirited because the clowns don't show up until 45 minutes. So you got a lot of character development, a few things here and there. I think the direction of the film is good because there's like a lot of elongated scenes where it's like just still, like images of like the front of the house or the garage or peering out into the woods, and like you hear like rustling of the leaves or scurrying around and some faint whispers and talking of what like these voices. And then you're like, okay, where is this going? You're looking for like some kind of movement, and it never really happens. And then it's just ding dong hello, the clowns are there now, and they pretty much make a statement, a good impact when they come into play by knocking off 2 main characters. Even though they're kind of not really main characters, they're just the 2 that never had any backstory, which was the stoners. So it's like, oh yeah, okay, they're done for. But yeah, it's just the clowns starting attacking people, and I wanted it. Again, I didn't know what to expect. I kind of expected it to be a little bit more meaner, because they are mean, and they are kind of mean-spirited and just like brutal in a way with what they're trying to do to these people and wanting to come in, because the clown comes in there and like, we're either going to play this 2 ways. Either you're going to come out or we're going to come in, or something like that. And then you have, just like the 2 main, well, technically the one clown that's talking, him with the suspenders. And then you have the other clown who's dressed as a member of Whale from the 90s, the guitarist from Whale. And it's just like funny. I was thinking, sitting there just like someone's a fan of Whale, or just like either my musical taste is so obscure I can reference this film to Whale from the 90s. But he's just sitting there because he's wearing a dress. The other clown is. He's just walking back and forth wearing a dress, and that's the whole reason I thought of Whale. And he was kind of dancing in a way too. But nonetheless, they're just there and they're attacking people, trying to get in, trying to get out. There's more clowns come in towards the last act of the movie. Like I said, it's perfectly fine. I mean, it's not a bad movie. It takes a while to get going, which can hinder it a little bit because I felt like we were too drawn, too much backstory on the characters, even once the clowns were involved, and then that happened, like all that, like it doesn't really matter, and then like towards the end, like there's this something story related that happens that involves a siren and like that doesn't really get fleshed out, and I guess they're leaving it open for a sequel, of course, but a lot of people is probably not going to like it for the ending because it just builds up and there's no payoff. But I kind of like that, but I do wish that there was a little bit more because like there's just like more backstory on the clowns, and I mean it's just like, again, you don't really need the backstory on the clowns. It's just something's happening and there's that happening, just showing up. But again, I felt like they worried too much about the main characters and their problems for nothing, technically, because, again, we'll get into it a little bit later, but Ian, your thoughts?
Well, I think, like, I agree with you. Like, I also like the way the direction. I thought it was actually fairly well acted. Sometimes when we watch these movies on Tubi, they're not so great. But, but your description, like, it didn't dawn on me until, like, you were describing the beginning and, like, why they were all at the cabin, and I got a flashback of an older movie a movie we reviewed, like, a couple of years ago. I think it was a Christmas movie. Anyway, I'm trying to remember what that was, but yeah, no. So I was like, I felt like this movie was familiar, and whatever that movie was, I'm thinking of. That's why. But I like the way the clown's makeup was. Pretty sure it was John Gacy's makeup. I'm not sure. I don't remember his thing, but that's what it reminded me of. And I was like, oh, random dude in the dress. I was kind of like, it's just like, okay. But I kind of did expect more from the clowns. But I thought what they did wasn't bad. I just wanted more. I felt like I wish there was more clowns than story. Like, I thought they did a great job painting the story and, like, why we should care about these characters, Because, especially, like, those movies we've watched where it's like there's 2 seconds on screen and then you just don't develop any personal feelings for any of them. And I hate that, but I felt like this movie kind of, like, it got its point across early on and just kept dragging it out just a tiny bit. Not necessarily a bad thing, but, 45 minutes until the first real clown attack in an hour and a half, an hour and 20-minute long movie. That's about half the movie.
And again, I like the clown stuff. I did. I like, again, it's a perfectly average home invasion.
Yeah.
Movie with clowns. I was kind of expecting sort of like a funny games type scenario with the very beginning, like with like the elongated scene of the girl in the house and she's doing the dishes and all those scenes. Like, it was like I was getting funny games vibes with it. But then it just kind of just didn't go that way. because I wanted, because again, the original Funny Games, and then of course like the remake of it. I mean, they're kind of mean-spirited movies, and I was like getting that vibe a little bit, and like maybe they go that way, and then they kind of do, but then they just kind of go the same route that we've seen in home invasion movies. They're mean, don't get me wrong, and they're kind of violent.
Yeah.
But don't really do that much besides that. I mean, I loved the scene with the girlfriend in the chair. I mean, I like that aspect. I mean, I still don't know how he managed to do that, but still, without breaking her teeth.
Oh, that was a nice scene.
Yeah, I mean, she really played that part well too. I don't want to give that away because it's a good scene. And again, like they introduce more clowns later, and then that's sort of like I was hearkening back to Molak's film Beware of the Clowns, where like all those clowns were going around, killing people, and just randomly, there's a giant tent full of clowns. Of course, that one's played for more camp. This one's more straightforward and serious. But they do this weird, I wouldn't say it's weird, but they introduce this thing once it's certain people are only left alive, and there's this siren that goes off, and then I was like thinking, okay, it's sort of similar to like Red State, Kevin Smith's Red State with the siren going off. And then like you're wanting to know more about this siren, like, okay, because the siren starts going off, and then they start playing music. Like, okay, so is it part of the music? No, it's actually a siren. So I don't know. I mean, I wanted more. I mean, you don't really need the backstory. I mean, I just like they introduced this again. It's just like a weird thing they introduced at the very last act, and like, it's like that one film we watched where they introduced like Halloween at Aunt Ethel's. I think it was like the very last act they introduced like something like the book, and like something like that, where it's like total last act just out of nowhere. Like she's a witch or something like that.
Yeah.
Like now I'm a witch, or Scarecrow County, where like the sister is the psychic. Like I always knew your gay dad. I was just like something like that, just totally last act stuff. And like the siren, like this one, of course, is handled way better, but they just introduced that siren, and like all these clowns come out of nowhere, and like, okay, so is there some kind of weird? Again, I can understand that in the sequel if they get to it. But there's just like, I was really to see, I was interested in seeing where this is going, and there's not really much of a payoff. And again, even all the characters that they introduce and all the reasonings and backstory and problems they're having, it's just that, and like, again, it's gone. Don't worry about that. Like, it's useless now.
Yeah.
But again, it's not a bad movie. Like I said, it's better than some of the ones we've watched. But sadly, I don't know if it's gonna be rememberable going forward. Like we're able to remember like a lot. I mean, I'm sure we'll remember it. I mean, we're still pretty good at remembering certain things with the shows when it comes up, and it's just like spark in our head. But this one is just going to be one of those where it's like, yeah, it's a perfectly fine, average home invasion movie with something. And it has some decent moments, but am I going to remember those decent moments over the insanity of 8-Ball or fucking the other shit we reviewed? It's just like it's a catch-22, and it's like it's worth it's a fine, okay clown movie. I mean, it's one of the better ones we reviewed, but it's
definitely
it's going to stand out above the shit that we had to go through to get to something like it. That's the thing.
Probably not.
Got anything else to add, Ian? Ian, are you there?
Yeah.
You got anything else to add, bud?
Huh?
Am I cutting out?
It sounds like it. It sounds like you're coming in and out. I can't tell if it shouldn't be me.
That's weird.
I had my
but do you
phone
have any final thoughts?
Yeah, those work. Not really. I mean, I think we pretty much covered everything, other than just chasing our tails. But
yeah, there's not really much else to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty simple movie. There's not, like you said, there's nothing that, like, The only thing that really kind of stood out in the film was the girl in the chair scene.
Mhm.
I think I'll remember that scene for a while.
Yeah.
And
the
honestly,
elongated
that kind of
shot.
set a tone. Yeah, and that was that I was expecting that. I was like, oh, that's what we're going to get through the rest of this movie, and I kind of was a little disappointed because it didn't keep up with that same horrid.
Yeah, you have two good scenes with like the introduction of the clowns, and then the chair scene, and then they just lose everything after that, where it's just like, oh, we're just going to chase you now.
Right. I think it's, I'm glad we watched it. It was a fine watch. I didn't hate myself after I watched it, like some of the movies we've watched.
Yeah.
It was fine. I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. Maybe if somebody was like, hey, let's watch a clown movie, and that happened to pop up, I'm like, okay, let's watch this.
Yeah, it's perfectly average. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it has some decent moments, but again, it's nothing, it's an okay watch. I mean, it's not, for what
I will watch the sequel if it comes out.
Yeah. It's you know what this reminded me of? Nailbiter from a few years back, where it's like the wife and the daughter are going to pick up the father-husband at the airport, and he's like an army veteran, he's in the army from the war, and there's the thunderstorm, and they go to the house, and the house is like these weird werewolf monster creatures, and they do this elongated thing where they're getting the wife and the daughters attacked, and then at the end of the movie, it ends with him coming back at the airport, and then it leaves off to Nailbiter 2. Was a Nailbiter 2. So that's exactly the other movie I was thinking. I was like, what was that movie with two people in the house? Fucking Nailbiter. And, but yeah. So again, there's all these other films that's just just reminding me of other things where it's just leads off of to the next film, So it's very reminiscent of Nailbiter as well. But yeah, I'm going off. That just popped in my head finally. I was like, Nailbiter. But yeah, it's perfectly fine. It's average. It's not going to be. It's not the worst. Thank God, it's not the worst clown movie we've sat through. But it's if you just want something, a home invasion type film, something different. It's an average. It's an okay watch. You're not going to hate yourself. You're not going to pull your eyes out and eat them. And just it's perfectly fine. But Ian, with that being said, I'm going to call this a show. And as always, it's great talking with you. And I can't wait until the next 2 weeks when we come back in October for our Halloween marathon, when we'll be able to do a couple shows next month. And I was looking through there. There's some interesting films that we can include. So that will be fun. And
looking forward to that.
I'm always looking forward to it, man. We're doing these shows now the way we want to. It's not the way we want to do them, but the best we can to our advantage, and just having fun with it. And hopefully everyone else can enjoy the ride, because we'll be able to stay a little bit longer than normal. So, but we talk about that all the time. But nonetheless, we're gonna get out of here and see what the next.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? It's Joe.
Buck, Ross, no one asked you to call in. All right, so fucking Buck's calling in again, so we don't need him. But, Ian, as always, it's great talking with you. Fucking mosquitoes all over the place now. But that's going to do it, and we'll see everyone next time for the next episode of Horror Night Oasis.
Good night.